Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Back J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number one in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
Yes, friends. As always, you guys are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. I'm your host, Critical Failure. Got a bunch of awesome stuff for you this week. Got some gaming stuff. Got some van casting. A little bit of Linux news. I haven't talked about Linux in a very long time. And also, we're going to be changing things up in the music department because at the time of recording this, battleofthebits.org is actually down. They're having server-side issues. Not to worry, though. I've got a bag of tricks up my sleeve, and we're going to have an awesome time. So I don't usually do this. I like to play chiptunes instead. It's a risky thing when you play actual game music because YouTube can just eat you alive. But we're going to check out the music of Ninja Gaiden, which is a game that many people have fond memories of. I didn't play Ninja Gaiden, any of those games, back in the day. We actually rented Ninja Gaiden 2 one time. And that's the extent of my experience with that series. I played it again much later in life. Like once the internet came around and I figured out what ROMs and emulators were, that's how I came to know that series. But a beloved series by many, a source of frustration by everyone else. This is Evasion from the original Ninja Gaiden on Nintendo. I had that saved for a second chiptune special that I never got around to putting together, but I still have all the tracks for. We're going to head over to the Vancast, but first, I've returned to an old friend of mine in the video gaming world, and that's MS-DOS. MS-DOS is where I started my journey into video games. Another story I've told many times here on the air. The first video game I ever saw was Space Quest on my dad's IBM 386 machine. He was a programmer in the 1980s, back when a computer was something that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and very few people had them. One day, it was common, I would see my dad working on spreadsheets and old text editors and working on programs and stuff. But one day I saw my older brother running Space Quest, and I had no idea that anything like that existed. I was 4 years old. It was pretty awesome. Even at 4 years old, that seems old now to the kids who grow up with iPhones and Android devices and touchscreens and everything like that. By the time my son was 2 years old, he was doing slider puzzles on his grandpa's iPad. So he has a 2-year jump on me. We'll see how that works out. And I want to know why this is recording so quietly. Is that better? I'm not seeing the needles jump nearly as much as they should be. As close as I am? How's that? So anyway, I went back to MS-DOS, or DOSBox rather. and I started messing around with QBasic. I talked about it the last couple weeks. I finally got the video up. It went okay. I had fun with it. But after that, I had this idea to return to... I wanted to set my copy of DOSBox up so that it would auto-mount. Now, I made a video on how to do this a couple years back, and it's been one of those slow build videos. Didn't do well out of the gate, but now it's got a few thousand people who have watched it. People leave comments every once in a while. You can set DOSBox up so that when you click in, it mounts your drive for you and everything. But it's not just that it mounts the drive for you. It's the fact that you have access to an auto-execute batch file. So anything you want DOSBox to do before you start typing, you can set it up to do. And one thing I noticed about DOSBox is it immediately launches that blue splash screen filled with text. And I think that thing looks lame. It's old. DOSBox has been around forever. I'm tired of looking at it. And especially now that I have mounting commands that auto-execute, I added a clear screen command to DOSBox, right? So I launch it, it does all the mounting, and then it wipes all that stuff out. So the first thing I see is my C drive, right, in DOS. It's pretty great. And, or rather, my G drive. I don't have it set up to auto-mount C. That way I can retain the capabilities of drag and drop. Anyway, so then I had this idea. I've got access to the auto-execute. I can make any sort of like introductory message that I want, right? I'll just have at echo off and then space echo and then type something, and that's going to show up, right, as soon as you launch DOS. So then it occurred to me to start looking up ASCII art, right? Hey, have a cup of coffee or like an encyclopedia set, one of those old ASCII pictures. Can't be anything too big. And I would program that into my auto-execute so that would show up instead of the old blue info box. I must have spent like 2 hours looking at old 1980s style ASCII art. I still haven't set anything up, but by goodness, if I don't have a large text file full of ASCII art, I'll probably never use sitting on my desktop now. Those simple changes to your computing environment, in my opinion, they're really important. That's how you make things yours, right? But anyway, now that that's all out of the way, what did I actually end up playing? I don't remember. I don't think I played anything. I think I set it up and I did QBasic. There was a game that my dad had called Janitor Joe, which it was called Janitor Joe, but the executable was called Jump Joe because you couldn't have that many letters. So in my mind, I remember it as Jump Joe. My dad had this game that was like a simple MS-DOS based platforming game where you would go up these platforms and there was like a robot that would go left and right, and it was one of those games that was programmed to run as fast as the CPU cycles could spit them out. So every computer ran it at a different speed, and it oftentimes would run too fast, to really be playable. So my dad had it, but we couldn't really play it the way it was supposed to be played. And now, with DOSBox, you have manual control over how many CPU cycles you're running, so you can slow programs like that down to a rate that they're playable. I do this a lot with Castle Wolfenstein. Castle Wolfenstein's another game like that. It runs too fast, but you can slow it down to about 350 CPU cycles. Then it runs just fine. Jump Joe. Jump Joe, guys. This was a game that my dad had. It's one of those games that I saw when I was a kid. It was super impressionable, and nobody else played it. So I think that might be getting a video at some point soon. I don't know. We'll see. At any rate, you know where we got to go now. Let's go to the van. It's Monday morning. It's the Vancast. I'll tell you what, guys. It rained over the weekend, almost all weekend, and it's supposed to keep raining throughout this week. And I gotta say, it's gotta be like 80% humidity out here right now. It feels super hot and super sticky, and the roads are empty. But you know what? It's that last bit that's really making my morning, because I'm able to just cruise down the road and no one's in the way. So I'm having a good time anyway, guys. So over the weekend, I was at night, I was sitting in bed. We had the TV on. I was watching TV with my wife, like I often do, and I had my little tiny laptop, my little tiny $100 laptop that can barely play games on it. And I was going through Steam, and I was playing some of the games that don't require any sort of,
power behind them. A lot of the old Apogee games and that sort of thing. And I played a game called Biomenace that I had never played before. When I was a kid, I used to really like Commander Keen, and I also really, really liked the first Duke Nukem game. Old Apogee side-scrolling action games. I really liked them. And I had never played Biomenace before. So imagine taking a side-scroller like Commander Keen or Duke Nukem, and imagine if Apogee made it as violent as possible. I mean, people's flesh falling off and dead bodies everywhere, and it was a cool game. It was really difficult. I wasn't really able to make any headway in it, but it was a cool game. That was Biomenace. I played that last night just before going to sleep. Let's see, what else? Well, I played a bunch of games over the weekend. Biomenace was the last one, but I also played some more Civilization 3 on like Friday or Saturday. So last night I sat down to play more Civ 3, and for some reason I couldn't get it working. It was weird. I was trying to click on things, and it was receiving like the mouse was actually clicking like 3 inches to the right of where it should be. So I don't know what was going on, but that was a bummer because I had a good Civ 3 game going where I started from modern times. Civ 3 comes packaged in with a bunch of mods if you click on the Civ content item, and one of them is start from the modern era, which I did, and it's been going really well, or it's been fun anyway. Played a little Civ 3, played a little Biomenace, and also last night I played the original Death Rally, which was a game that deserved more acclaim, I think, than it got. Because Death Rally was a great game. Top-down racing, some shooting, some advancing your car, buying, parts and new vehicles and stuff. And you would think a game like that, there would be other versions, more modern versions of the same thing, but there isn't. Death Rally is really one of a kind. They tried some sort of remake, around, I don't know when, maybe 2010, 2011. But the original Death Rally stands alone. There's really no other game like it. I got to play that a little while last night too. That was pretty cool. So apart from those few games in the evening on my tiny laptop, that was really all the gaming I did over the weekend. Taught my son how to play Magic the Gathering, which was kind of fun, just with my old decks from years ago. And it went okay. It was cool to play again, and I always enjoy playing games with my son. So that was my weekend. I got up early this morning and I started editing videos. I haven't put out many videos lately. And I have a lot of footage. I've got the footage for like 6 or 7 different videos. I realized that as far back as like when I bought the Need for Speed for the Sega Saturn, I have an unboxing of that filmed. So I gotta get that edited and get it up. So hopefully this week, by the time you hear this, we'll have a bunch of content out that you guys can check out, which is pretty cool. Because some of those videos, when I was shooting them, I felt like they were really good. So hopefully this should be a really good week. I really want to make a video about Biomenace now, because that was a shocker. It was still just an old Apogee side-scroller, but I had no idea that they made any of them that were that violent. And you play as like an 80s action star guy with a mullet. Oh man, that game was good. So that was my weekend. Now if I were back home, what would I play? That's how I like to end these Vancasts. If all my responsibility went away and I didn't have to go in on this humid, rainy Monday morning and do my Monday at work, what would I go home and play? Oh man, I'm seeing a tow truck drive past me carrying a busted up car it's got grass all over the roof, and it's smashed in from every angle, and grass is all over the roof. So that thing must have flipped. Man, somebody had a rough time. Sorry, what was I saying? If I was absolved of all responsibility, what would I go home and play? I kind of want to play Civ 3 again. I was in the middle of a Civ 3 game. I want to try and get that working. You know what I would play? I would play Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, because just before I left the house this morning, I had my suit on. I picked up my lunch, my phone rang, and it was my good buddy Darabka. He completed his turn in our play by email game. So just like when it was 2 minutes too late, I got the call that it was my turn. So I would finish my turn in our Alien Crossfire Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri game. Because that's been cool too. That's been great. That's a game that supports play by email very well, actually, which has been super cool. And that'd be my morning. After that, I'd fire up some hot tea and just hang out, enjoy summertime, enjoy being around my kids, because that's been fun. It's been really cool, man. And with that, I think I'm gonna get off of here and fire up some Iron Maiden and do the rest of my morning drive. So for you guys, I'll send you back to Panzer Studios. Have a good one. Well, I made it safely to work, but man, that was some of the most dangerous rain I've driven in a long time. And now it's been commemorated. Now it's been commemorated here on TCR on the Vancast. I feel like I gotta shake that off a bit before I get out of the car and go into the building, do my day at work.
All right. This next one you guys will recognize. Let's do the old jukebox breaks. Oh gosh, I messed that up. The old jukebox break. This is what Gooch the Douchebag used to do. This. They'd play a track, and it'd be up to you to guess what it is, so you can play along at home. I feel like I botched that so bad, but I have to go with it because I don't have a whole lot of time, and I got to get this week's episode done. Anyways, listen up, boys and girls, and after the track, we'll compare notes. See that? We gotta make the first one easy so you can get the feel for the game. That is, of course, Green Greens from Kirby's Dream Land, the original Kirby's Dream Land, which I got so hooked on when I was a kid. Kirby's Dream Land was one of these games where I couldn't believe you could do all of that stuff in a game. You could fly, right? You could float on water. All you had to do was suck in a little air and you'd float on the water. You could eat the creatures around you. Like nobody could touch Kirby because he would just eat them. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Now, to be fair, the final boss was a bit of a tough one. But the rest of the game was a breeze, and it was a breeze game that came at a time when that was just what the doctor ordered. I was young. Video games were incredibly difficult, and then here comes this game where you can do everything. The music is clearly great, and it was very beatable. And that's Kirby's Dream Land, and it was amazing when I was a kid. When I was in middle school, I made one of those bad trades where I loaned a kid my copy of Kirby's Dream Land in exchange for something else. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. You know that trap you fall into when you're a kid? I can't remember exactly what he loaned me, but it was one of these Game Boy games that was like 2 classic arcade games mashed into a single cart. Like Missile Command and Centipede or something like that. And I traded Kirby's Dream Land for that. Now, most kids, when they borrow a game and they don't want to give it back to you, or if they make a trade and they don't want to trade back, they just lie or avoid you. This guy was like, no, I like Kirby. Hey, come on, man, I got your game. No, I'm keeping this one. You can keep that. To this day, if I find that guy, I'm coming for him. Kind of want to give out his first name and last name. I want to dox him. I can't do that. That's not how you treat people. But I'm still mad about it. I'll tell you what. Listen, we got some more. We have some more van casting, but I'm having a good time with this old jukebox break thing that G&DB used to do. So let's do one more. All right, we did the easy one. Now let's crank up the difficulty a little bit, and I'm even going to give you a big hint. If you couldn't already tell by the sound, this is going to be from the original Game Boy. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stay with me. Yes, friends. That is the main theme of the Game Boy game Fortified Zone. Fortified Zone, yes. Fortified Zone is one of those games, I don't know if it's expensive or not, but it certainly has the artwork of an expensive game. This 1980s anime sort of aesthetic to it that you see on the games that cost hundreds of dollars. Battlezone 2, you know, those types of games. I want to say, for some reason in my head, I want to say it's an SNK game, but I don't think that's true. I don't think it is. I can tell you what, I wish it was as a game, I wish it was as good as that song is. But alright, let's head back to the van and see what else we got for the rest of this past week.
Good morning, everybody. It's the Vancast. It's Wednesday morning today. Is it Wednesday already? That can't be right. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday, and to be perfectly honest with you, I've lost track at this point. But I'm on my way to work. I believe this is the second Vancast of the week. It's pouring rain outside today. Can you hear it? It's pouring rain. It rained all weekend leading up to this week. And it rained off and on yesterday, and here it is pouring rain again. Every stinking day. So how are we dealing with it? Well, thankfully at work I park in a parking garage. It won't be that, once I get there, it won't be that big of a deal. Right now I'm just dealing with the commute, trying to be as safe as I possibly can. Alright, let's talk about some video games. So last week you might remember me talking about something I'm calling my deep dive. Deep dive. It's a way of saving money. Look, if you got a big video game collection, if you've got more than 100 video games, somewhere in that collection there's games that aren't getting played. Now, there's a lot of reasons why you could own a game that's not getting played. It could be because you're more interested in new things. It could be because you have set it aside and got bored of it. everybody has a big backlog. The collectors all have backlogs. So this is a time for me to dig into that backlog and play games that I already have as opposed to spending money. Oh my gosh. I don't even know if you're going to be able to hear this over the rain. My goodness. So the game that I've locked on right now, I mentioned it briefly yesterday, was Death Rally. I played Death Rally again last night, and it was really fun. Death Rally, the old top-down racing game with machine guns from Apogee Software, guest starring Duke Nukem. And it remains one of the only games you can buy on Steam right now that has Duke Nukem in it. And thank goodness for that, because I think if Gearbox Software caught wind of the fact that Duke Nukem is in that game, they would have pulled it. I know there were other top-down racing games from back in the day. I never really played any of them except for Death Rally. But there was a Micro Machines franchise, right? Micro Machines was also top-down racing. I know those games are pretty beloved. I don't think I have any of those, though. But the whole top-down racing thing, it's an interesting solution to making a really nice-looking racing game back on the MS-DOS days, when it was difficult to make like a 3D environment or something that looked 3D and have it look nice. There were other ways to go about it, but I think their solution was pretty interesting. You can run over spectators on the side of the road and they leave trails of blood behind them, and it's just, it's a good time. Alright guys and gals, I'm signing off for now because I'm worried about driving in the rain, this sort of heavy rain. I don't know how well this is going to come out, and I kind of want to focus on driving. So if I were back home, I'd play Death Rally right now because I had such a good time playing it last night. Alright guys and gals, I'm sending you back to the safety of Panzer Studios. I'll see you there.
Alright, boys and girls. This is the point in the show where I like to give a little love to the patrons. This is a Patreon-sponsored podcast. There's no ads. It's just me and these guys who are kind enough to give their resources to make sure that we get these coming out every week. And to them, I can only offer a couple of things. They get early access to the show. As soon as it gets done, they get a copy of it. I'm also releasing a new supporters-only podcast called The After Party, which the first episode of The After Party just came out, and the next one will be out next month. So they get access to The After Party, and I also read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. They are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and the Cartridge Brothers. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your support. Alright, let's do one more jukebox break. Are you digging these? I'm digging these. We're going to do one more. My thanks to G&DB from all those years ago for coming up with this. I'll have to give it a different name if I'm actually going to steal this and adopt it as a regular segment. But that's where it came from, to give props where props are due. Alright, boys and girls, so for the third and final time, get your thinking caps on, listen close, try and figure out where this track comes from, okay? You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Something special. That one goes back to when the Game Boy was a new thing. The first handful of Game Boy games I ever saw. This wasn't the first, but it was one of the first. And it's a track from Final Fantasy Legends 3. It's the fight theme from Final Fantasy Legends 3. Huge. First of all, it's a Final Fantasy game and it's the battle theme. So you're going to hear that song 100 times, 1,000 times playing through that game. And Final Fantasy Legends 3. Legends 3 was such an awesome JRPG, RPG, whatever you want to call them, for the Game Boy. What better way could they bring that format to the Game Boy than Legends 3? It wasn't a port. It may have been from a different series, renamed to be in the Final Fantasy franchise, but something made for the Game Boy, for that 1.5-inch, 2-inch screen the Game Boy had, for the 1:1 aspect ratio screen that the Game Boy had, made for that format beautifully. Final Fantasy Legends 3.
It's time for the fail bag.
Yes, friends, it's that fantabulous form of entertainment where I read your questions, comments, anything you want read on the air. It's time for you guys to interact with me. It is the fail bag. This is the part where we enjoy the fact that it's a small operation. It's just me here. It's just me and it's just you. As of right now, the statistics in the last episode were 5 hits on YouTube and another 5 hits on Podomatic.com. Plus, however many of the patrons listen over on Patreon. We're looking at about 15 people listening to the last episode, and that's fine. I partially attribute that to the fact that Magic the Gathering was front and center of a video game podcast, so it seems natural that a lot of the random traffic would tune out. So that's it. Let's read the comments and interact a little bit and get a little bit closer. I do really have the Magic the Gathering bug, I gotta say. I'm trying to avoid it as a topic because, I know that's not what you guys are into, and I don't know, video game podcast focusing on Magic the Gathering, it doesn't really add up to me. But anyway, we're going back to the last week's episode. Let's read the comments. And still loading. We got 2, all right? And I partially attribute that to the fact that this is being recorded on Thursday, and a lot of people listen over the weekend. So there will probably be more from here after this that won't make it on until next week. So these are from Desm and What's on My Shelf. What's on My Shelf writes, I never had technical issues with Pitfall 2 or Mountain King on the 2600. Could this be some problem with your 2600? Why would an expansion chip on the ROM board cause issues? Should I be more careful with those carts? And then he goes on, I'm glad I never got on the coffee or alcohol bandwagon. There's so many health problems associated with both. I wish you'd have resisted drinking that cup longer. There are foods which give you a huge energy boost. If you're at all interested in changing your diet, let me know. Regarding my programming, my knowledge of programming, I've programmed in C, C++, C#, Java, and some scripting languages, but those are not my forte, neither is the server stuff you mentioned. But yes, the grammar of these languages is usually very similar. I've even programmed in something akin to assembly for the GBW. I don't think they call it assembly, but you're looking to do all the heavy lifting of the bits in that language, moving them from one address to another. Instead of Visual Basic, why not try C#? Oh, what a great comment. We got programming stuff, and I love it. Especially after recording that QBasic video, trying to make a simple program, and derping it up so hard with the logic. Let's start at the beginning. You asked about Pitfall 2 and Mountain King and having issues with that. I think it's a hardware issue with my particular Atari 2600. Activision carts in general have been dodgy with me. For example, one of the first games I got was Mega Mania, and it had some kind of weird colors, and it never really worked right, but I held onto the cart, right? So much later, Enduro, another Activision cart, same kind of deal. Now that one I can get working, but I have to clean it, and I have to put it in very carefully. And now, Pitfall 2, all Activision carts. So I don't know if it's carts, if it's just these Activision carts, or it's carts with expansion chips. The trouble is I don't know which ones do and don't have expansion chips on the boards. I'm not that knowledgeable of the Atari set. But I'm inclined to think it's something with my system and not with the games. Especially since I'm able to get them working if I mess with it, but that would kind of indicate the opposite. I don't know. I gotta be honest. The Atari is a big jumble of oldness, old hardware, old software, old components, old parts. Everything is old. And I don't know what's going wrong and where. I mean, just to put the cards on the table and really be real with you for a minute, instead of just trying to act like I know things when I don't. That's what happens. But also, both of those games do work. I mean, I got a fool with them, but they do work. So, you know, I played with the idea of getting another Atari 2600 at one point, but I don't know. I changed my mind on that. And I can't exactly tell you why. I think I just reached a point where it's like, I got all the Atari stuff I want. I'm doing this deep dive now to try and save some money, which is especially difficult to do right at the same time I'm discovering Magic the Gathering again. But, yeah. I wouldn't mind getting a paddle controller, though. I still don't have a paddle controller for the Atari. And what's funny is the paddle controller games are usually, not always, but usually the games people talk about when it comes to the Atari. When people remember it fondly, it's paddle controllers, man. The paddle controllers were like the thing that the Atari could do that no system can still do yet. There's nothing quite like the paddle controller. When it works, when there's no jitters, right? When there's no, when it comes from someone who's, you know, not dumb enough to put WD-40 up in there, there's nothing like it. It's the best. And I know that because I got to use one twice in my life. Twice at a convention center. All right, so you also talked about the coffee thing. Just to give you a recap of what he's talking about, I was on I was on a camping trip for the Cub Scouts, and the thing about hang on a second. The thing about this Cub Scouts camping trip is that you're walking a ton and you're never back at the campsite. So everything is go, 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 go. And I look, I'm in pretty good shape for me. But I wasn't used to walking 10 miles. So I was beat. And I was beat in the middle of the woods and I didn't have access to stuff. Now, if I did have access to things, I would have went with beef broth. I think beef broth would have done the trick for me. That's something I picked up after surgery, is how much I love broth. No sugar, right? No caffeine, but I can still keep it in a coffee cup, so I still have this sort of affectation that I picked up while I was a coffee drinker. But I will tell you this. After I drank the cup, I went back to not drinking coffee. So it is still something that I've left behind. It's just I'm going to have to plan carefully if I'm going out in the middle of the woods. So in order to do, okay, in your third paragraph you talked about programming. So in order to do like simple Windows programs, you're saying C# is the way to go instead of Visual Basic? Rock and roll. I looked, after you left this message initially, I looked up C# and just did some cursory looking around. Why not? Why not? Thanks for the comments, brother. It's always good to hear from you. And by the way, I came across your YouTube series as well. I know you post over on MondoCoolcast.com, or you did for a while. There's some good. There is some good stuff over there on that channel of yours. What's on my shelf? That's what it is. If you guys want to look it up. The next one comes from my good buddy Desm. Desm101 writes, big fan of old pinball games. Played some Super Pinball on Famicom recently. The two games by Rare, Pinbot and High Speed, are probably my favorite NES pinball games. Good stuff. When I started my YouTube channel, the first... hang on. I seem to remember this being my first real review type video. My first video was a music video, but my first video where I dug into games and really wrote an essay, I was doing every single pinball game for the NES. Now, I didn't know, there were a couple of games that I didn't know about at the time, so it doesn't cover every one of them. It only covers like 4 out of 7 or something like that. I don't know. But I didn't know about High Speed. I did know Pinbot, though. Pinbot I played when I was a young kid. And I think it's interesting that they took like a real pinball machine that actually existed and they rebuilt it in the NES. But something about the way that game plays never really stuck with me. I feel like the visuals are really jumbled. I couldn't quite... didn't quite click with me. And it may be, to be fair, that when I played Pinbot, I had already played a lot of Rollerball. And Rollerball on the NES is a great game. That is a game that far surpasses a lot of video pinball that came out even after that. It's not realistic by any means. I remember reading that if you stacked, in realistic terms, the table in Rollerball is like 3 pinball machines stacked on top of each other or something. Or maybe 2 or something like that. It's big, unrealistic make-believe table, which is, in my opinion, I think a lot of the greatest video game pinball tables are that way. But that's cool, man. Enjoy them. They were fun games made at fun times. Did you ever play Pinball Fantasy? What did you think of that game? That's another one that I changed my opinion on. I didn't really like it back when I made that video. It's this pinball game where you're like playing. It's like a cross between a pinball game and an RPG, if you could imagine that. Didn't think much of it, but now that I go back and look at it, I realize it was a really creative game. It was a creative game made at a time in which you could still make cliches and it was okay. You know what I mean? How many pinball games were on the NES? Not many. They could have just made a regular old pinball game. It would have been fine. Same with an RPG, but no. They decided to cross the two. Innovate. Make something new, which was great. All right, guys and gals. We're only 40 minutes in. We're not done yet. We're going to play a track from Starship Amazing. We're going back to Broken Robots. Their old album from their Scoops/Gearhart days. This track is called Kitty Pizza Face. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. All right. That's Jeez Louise, my brain just kind of went blank. That's what worries me. Is like I'm only in my 30s, right? I'm 34 years old, but once in a while my brain just comes to a screeching halt, and it kind of scares me a little bit to be honest. Who was that made that song? It's those two Alaskan guys, Derek and Calvin, right? Starship Amazing, that's it. Jeez Louise, it's written on the screen in front of me. I'm in trouble. That's Starship Amazing, with a track off their Broken Robots album, which I believe they give away for free now. They used to charge money for some of those, but Scoops and Gearhart and all those, that's all free. So look them up. Starship Amazing. Whatever you can and can't say about Starship Amazing, that was a hugely influential group for me. Before I found them, I had no idea that electronic music could be something cool and creative. All I thought about when it came to electronic music was like 90s techno danceteria kind of stuff. That's what I thought electronic music was and is. Alright, guys and gals, let's read some comments from some other places, other videos that I've got up. We'll just see what's out there, because I got a lot of stuff, right? Some of these comments are weird, some of them are fun, and another thing I'd like to do is read some, do I have it? I posted one of my videos over on Reddit, which I had never done. By the way, never post your video on Reddit, because people talk bad about the comments on YouTube. Reddit commenters are brutal. Absolutely brutal. Man, oh man. That I feel like I should look that up, because I put, you know what? That's where we're going first. Give me a second. I'm going to open up Reddit. We're going to see just how how deep the well goes. All right, the video that I posted was in the vinyl board, and I posted the one where I opened the funeral oration record, and I was really excited about that video. I felt like that had a lot of stuff from the past. I talked about some of the compilation albums that were coming out at the time, and of course, I mean, I should have seen it coming from the elitism of some of the I'll say some, because not all people are like this, but some of the punk rock audience out there. I should have expected a little punk elitism. But anyway, let's see what they said. The first comment simply reads, "Big deal." Wait, can I let me reopen the post, because that's another thing. And this was upvoted a bunch of times. Next, we have one that reads, there was a lot more going on in the 90s than the pedestrian music Epitaph and Fat Records was putting out. That's the number one comment. And then, this is my favorite one. "Cut your stinking hair, it's 2018. Those are the Reddit responses to my quickly downvoted video, an acquisition in 1990s punk vinyl. This has got to be my favorite YouTube comment of all time. Soshimi, 2 days ago, left a couple comments on my video about how to auto-mount in DOSBox. I talked about this just earlier in this episode. 2 comments. Number one, first of all, his avatar is a question mark, which is great. Number one, very useful video. Awesome, thanks, man. And the second one, this is the best one ever. He writes, "I found like button. I will push it." I'm so happy that you have found like button and you will push it. Alright, what else we got? Death Adder leaves one on my Magic the Gathering package opening. He writes, 88 views and 3 dislikes. It looks like the Omega Male Neckbeards found this one. I bet it was pretty cool feeling open up a fresh pack after so many years. I remember it being a fun game, and God bless if they're being it in video game form. Yeah, Death Adder, you're right. And I'll tell you what, hang on one second. There are some awesome Magic the Gathering video games out there, specifically the one from 1997. I think it was 1997. There was one from the CD-ROM based era. Hang on. Jeez Louise. And this particular game becomes the topic of conversation every time Magic the Gathering comes up in video games. It was the perfect trading card video game ever. Every card was available. You could use what they call in the Magic the Gathering world something called the Power 9, right? The cards that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not more. All of that. Go for it. It's a video game. You don't really need to get the rare cards. Why not? You're not obtaining the real cards. They just made everything available. Why not? Oh, it was beautiful. Oh, hey. Playing a trading card game gets people bored, right? I mean, it's fun, but you could... there's a limit to how much it'll occupy your time. Why don't we create an entire RPG adventure where the combat system is just playing the old card game? It'd be great. Man, you wouldn't see that today. Absolutely not. But that's Magic the Gathering. So here's another one. This is also from Death Adder. And strangely enough, this is from the last podcast, and it didn't show up when I was just clicking in on YouTube a few minutes ago. Now I'm looking at like the quote-unquote creators studio, and I see it. But anyway, here's Death Adder 3 days ago in the last week's podcast. The blob at the game store sounded like a D-bag. You should have laid out some black mana on the counter and just said you summoned a super kick, followed by super kicking him through the glass display case full of vintage pogs and slammers. I think I've said this before on the internet, but I traded my Magic cards to a kid for Shadows of the Empire in middle school. No regrets. Sweet art for excuse me. Sweet artwork for 244, by the way. Thanks, man. You know, it's funny you should say that, because while I've been in the midst of my Magic the Gathering craze, I've also kind of been looking up Pogs. Not that I am as interested in Pogs, but I think it would be nice to drop $20 on like a kit or somebody's old lot from eBay with like maybe 50 Pogs and a couple of Slammers, just so that I could get it out as if it were a static board game and play with my kids. I think they would enjoy Pogs, right? All right, guys and gals, I've got one comment left that I think is really worth discussing. This is Gaming Investigation. Gaming Investigation left this comment 3 days ago. Excuse me. On my GOG collection video. All right, so if you're not familiar, I made GOG collection video and a Steam collection video 3 years ago as a joke. They were jokes. The running time of each video is like 12 seconds, and it's just me scrolling down going, wee, wee, and my son was there. He was really little. He did the same thing. It was fun. It was a little joke. Poorly received, but it's by design. It's okay. It's a bit of a troll. So I'm still getting comments on these videos. Gaming Investigation writes, wah, my kids put the Wii effect. This video look like a collection. Dislike. I love it. I'm just crossing over that threshold in popularity where I'm finally getting out there enough to get negative comments, and I'm really enjoying it. Which is, I guess, the opposite of what you'd expect to hear from people. All right, guys and gals, I'm out of time to record. I've got to wrap this up, which kind of sucks because we're only 52 minutes in. I feel like we could stretch it out a little bit, but that's all I got for now. So just a quick moment to throw some positivity your way. Whatever you're doing that's brought you 52 minutes and 47 seconds into this podcast, thanks for spending your time here with me. I appreciate it very much. And as you go through this next week, make it a good one, because I'm rooting for you, and I'll see you next Monday.